Trump to appear in court to face federal charges in 2020 election case while D.C. courthouse hunkers down for Trump to arrive. Judges are sentencing January 6 defendants as the federal court in Washington, D.C. hunkered down for Donald Trump's expected appearance later today. A sentencing hearing was underway this morning for a man charged in connection with the January 6 insurrection. District Judge Randolph Moss addressed Trump's appearance as he began the hearing for Jeffrey Grace, a proud boy from Washington state who pleaded guilty to illegally entering and remaining in the U.S. Capitol building with his son on January 6, 2021. "Nothing that is going on in the courthouse will have any bearings on what I decide today," Moss said. Later on, the judge sentenced Grace to 75 days behind bars. Moss urged lawyers for both the government and Grace not to rush through the proceeding in an effort to leave the courthouse before Trump arrives. "I recognize that other things happening in the courthouse today are garnering public attention," Moss said to the attorneys, adding that Grace's sentencing is his sole focus. There are several additional proceedings for Capitol riot defendants scheduled to take place in the courthouse Thursday, including a father and son from South Carolina accused of breaching the Capitol and a Florida man who, according to prosecutors, texted someone on January 6, "Loved every minute of it, dude." While Amit Judge Mehta did not say anything about the Trump-related court proceedings at the courthouse during the sentencing of the Florida man, Richard Escalera, he called the attack on the U.S. Capitol a dark day in the nation's history. Mehta also said there continues to be concerns to this day. Mehta sentenced Escalera to 7 days of incarceration and 2 years of probation. The judge has presided over several January 6 cases, including several of the Oath Keepers. During Thursday's hearing, he said he has tried to stay consistent among the sentences he has imposed. What the security presence is like outside the federal courthouse where Trump will be arraigned today a few hours before former President Donald Trump's arraignment Thursday, the federal courthouse in Washington, D.C., is teeming with security measures but not yet any large public gatherings. Around 11 a.m. Eastern Time, about 5 hours before Trump is expected to arrive, the scene was not as hectic outside the courthouse as before Trump's other proceedings in Florida and New York, CNN's Shimon Prokopez reports. Few protesters, either in favor or opposed to the former president, have materialized, Prokopez said. "By this point in all the other arraignments, we have seen a fair number of people gather," he said. Prokopez was reporting from the side of the courthouse where Trump is expected to arrive around 4 p.m. Eastern Time. This is where security efforts are particularly concentrated. Members of the U.S. Marshals Service, Secret Service agents, D.C. police and federal law enforcement can be seen milling around the security barriers outside the building. Snowplows are lined up outside the metal barriers as another impediment to anyone potentially trying to cross the line, though it isn't clear if they will ultimately be moved into a different position when the former president's motorcade arrives. Prokopez said security appears tighter than it was at Trump's Florida arraignment. They're not taking any chances. Law enforcement officials involved in the preparation for Trump's court appearance have told CNN they are monitoring for potential threats, protests and online chatter, as well as coordinating with one another on security plans for the former president's hearing. D.C.'s Metropolitan Police Department will be leading security in the district while U.S. Secret Service oversees the protection of the former president and the U.S. Marshals Service runs security inside the courthouse. Special counsel Jack Smith is behind 2 Trump indictments. Here's what to know about him. Special counsel Jack Smith re-entered the public eye Tuesday with a grand jury's indictment of Donald Trump over his alleged efforts to overturn the 2020 election leading up to the January 6, 2021, attack on the U.S. Capitol. This is Smith's second probe into the former president. Trump has denied wrongdoing in both cases and cast Smith's probes as a weaponization of the federal government. But Smith has investigated members of both parties, handling some of the most high-profile political corruption cases in recent memory, with mixed outcomes. His experience ranges from prosecuting a sitting U.S. senator to bringing cases against gang members who were ultimately convicted of murdering New York City police officers. Smith's career spans multiple stints in the Justice Department and international courts, which until his appointment had allowed him to keep a relatively low profile in the oftentimes brassy legal industry. After serving as a prosecutor at the local and federal levels as well as a stint at the International Criminal Court, Smith oversaw corruption cases as chief of the Justice Department's Public Integrity Unit from 2010 to 2015. Smith was the head of the section when the department failed to convict former Senator and vice presidential candidate John Edwards, a Democrat, in a corruption case in 2012, and when then Virginia Governor Bob McDonnell, a Republican, was indicted in 2014. He also oversaw the investigation into former House Majority Leader Tom DeLay, a Republican, closing the probe in 2010 without bringing charges. Smith would go on to serve as an assistant U.S. attorney for the Middle District of Tennessee, taking over as acting U.S. attorney in early 2017. He became vice president of litigation for the Hospital Corporation of America later that year. In recent years, Smith lived outside of the United States as the chief prosecutor for the Special Court in The Hague, a role he assumed in 2018 in which he investigated war crimes in Kosovo.